Hello, this is Oliver. I wanted to talk to you about parenting and relationships and a scientific name called attachment. So there's a thing called attachment theory, which is a psychological, children's psychological, parenting psychological theory. But it's basically well established, it's well recognized, it's validated, it's accepted basically scientifically. And this idea or truth has changed the way I look at a lot of things in my life, from my history, from my memories, from the way society talks about parenting and relationships, intimate relationships, the way I've been with my child, and the way I've been failing recently as a father. And it's like a fundamental change. I like to say recontextualization. I've been recontextualized. It means I see things very differently. It's like, I used to be communist before, and now I'm more of a capitalist. Or I used to be heterosexual, and then I became gay. Something like that. It's So it all happened because it started with trying to figure out what was happening with my stepchildren, why I could not get them to do something, anything, or some things. There's a disconnection, and I couldn't figure out why. I felt like I was not being loving enough, but that's too general. Like, it's true, but it was too general. So anyway, I was reading a book, listening to a book, and it was talking about relationships in general by a guy called Daniel Siegel, Dr. Daniel Siegel, well-respected psychologist, research psychologist, and then an educator. So he does lots of research and pushes the envelope around that whole thing. And he wrote this other book called No Drama Discipline, which is really great. So it's about, parenting. This is the way to do it. And he has an idea, the takeaway idea is, with children, you reconnect with them, and then you redirect, or you connect with them, that parental connection, and then you educate them or redirect them or say no, something like that. So it's a principle. And then I was listening to his other books just to make sure I really trust this guy. Does he really know what he's talking about? That's kind of what I do. I really get into the details of a subject that I'm studying. And I had been resisting studying this subject of parenting for a long time. I've been resisting, but the problems I was inside of were just not solving through time, patience, bashing, and just doing what I thought was the right thing. It wasn't working. So he's talking about in this other book called The Neurobiology of relationships. He's a bit of an academic, right? Anyway, and he basically introduced this idea of attachment theory. And he was saying that basically, so it's basically a psychological theory. So it's possible to interview parents before a child is born with these questions. It goes for about 15 minutes, half an hour, a whole bunch of questions about relationships and the meaning of them and how they feel and think and opinions. But it's a test but it comes across as an interview, a very gentle interview, but it is a test. And basically it gets analysed, it gets analysed and people get categorised into a type, the way that they think about relationships. And then there's 4 types. The best one is called secure. Next one is avoidant. Another one is anxious. I can't remember the last one. But anyway, so I listened to that and I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And he was saying basically that, if people are interviewed before a child is born, both parents, and they will have there'll be a type of, the way that they think about relationships will be in one of these categories, right? And then they interview, then they do a different test, but related, and a different attachment test when the child is born 12 months later to 18 months later. They'll do this test with slightly withdrawing the child from the parent for a certain amount of time, and without any words, the child will also be able to be analysed or assessed to be in one of these 4 types of attachment. The child will respond in the same way with their caregivers, their parents. And Dan Siegel was saying that the research is a very, 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 very strong results is that if it will match the parents 60% of the time, which is a massive correlation. So if the parents are avoidant, if that parent is avoidant, the child will be avoidant with the parent. It will match 60% of the time, if the parent, for whatever reason. So it's extremely strong scientific finding. So if the parents are secure, the child will be secure to the parent. If they think about relationships in that way. And I was like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder what I am. And then Dan Siegel gives an example of an avoidant. And when I listened to that story, he gave an example of kind of a generic example of that. It hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, that is what I am. I am an avoidant. The way I think about relationship is avoidant. And click, 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 a whole bunch of things in my memory of childhood, teenagers, and then 20s and 30s with my relationships, friendships, work, and then becoming a parent and a step parent, about 15 memories and head scratching. Why did that negative thing or half fail thing, why all these things just clicked into place. And I immediately rang up my sister and I said, I think I figured out a really big weakness in myself, problem that I just didn't see before. I saw it, I saw the symptoms of it, but I couldn't see why I was that way. Now, I'm not going to go into all those symptoms, right? I'm not going to, basically it's avoidant, let's just generalize it. But there are about 15 things, like I was saying, which I just hadn't seen. So I've done different spiritual things over the years. I'm into spirituality. I'm pretty solid with, one or two things. I don't flip around a lot. But I have evolved. But it's kind of my main, thing. It's a hobby, or it's a central part of my life. And I'd figured out some problems, and worked out where those problems came from. And I feel like I could but only about, say, 5 problems I've solved using just spirituality. But this attachment, and this avoidant attachment, kind of answers why about a whole bunch of other things that I just couldn't see before. Anyway, I rang up my sister and said, hey, did you know, I remember when I was 13 or 14, I forgot my bag on the way home from school, on the way home, and Dad got really angry. He got so angry that he turned around and said, I'm not going to talk to you for like a week. It's either 3 days or a week or 2 weeks or something. And that's what he did. He disconnected talking to me. He ignored me. Like, that's what I'm going to do, and that's what he did. So that would be a kind of anyway. It's a type of parenting which it's not so cool. But I can see that a child that would happen to, they would basically start to avoid that parent because that parent's withdrawing love. Anyway, it's one little story that I could see now from this attachment theory that's how I would respond. But like, that's just one little story. But I just was wondering why, like when my dad died at 18, my internal response was, good, that's good, he's died, he's dead now. It's a relief, he's gone. I don't have to deal with him anymore. And that was a puzzle to me. I was like, oh, you're not supposed to respond like that, Oliver. Why did you respond like that? That's very strange. Like, I never said it to anyone at the time, but I could hear that in my head. And I also was like, oh, hang on. He was supposed to tell me some stuff. Like, I'm growing up and he was supposed to teach me something. So he was supposed to, tell me birds and the bees and this is how you fix a car and, this is what you think should be thinking about politics and this is what you do with the girls and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, he didn't tell me any of that stuff or much. Like, I've missed out. Like, what happened? It was like this feeling of he wasn't there for me. And I was like, oh well, what can I do? Like when I was 18 and 20s, this feeling, what can you do? So that's now making sense now. He wasn't there for me, or we weren't there for each other. Whatever. So after I basically haven't read any more of that book, I went back and started to study this whole thing of attachment. I started looking online more, and I connected to YouTube. You start looking on YouTube, and they give you all these suggestions of other things. Sorry, actually, I asked. Anyway, I had this lucky connection to this other writer. His name is Gabor Mate, Canadian doctor, and he co-wrote. Anyway, he gave a video about peer orientation. It's called peer orientation. So in the context of attachment theory, which just by the way doesn't just cover the first 3 years of life where children will just automatically attach to parents, it actually goes through to their fully mature, which is now considered like around 25 years old. It's now considered that's how long it actually takes for people to mature. So the attachment theory is actually covering that whole period. And in some ways it actually covers the whole of life. But anyway, it's not just 3 years old where they obviously will attach, they're instinctual to hang on to a hand or a teat. Yes. So, Gabor Mate co-wrote a book with a man called Dr. Gordon Neufeld. And then I realized that Gordon Neufeld is the actual intellectual core of that book. And so he talks about peer orientation, so friend orientation in the context of attachment theory. And the book is called Hold On to Your Kids. And it was a rough ride to listen to that book. 3/4 of the book is basically explaining the negative aspect, like it's explaining the problem that our society, our culture, and our families and individuals are all allowing, unconsciously basically, even actively, peer orientation. They're not this attachment, which is so obvious till 3, like children will obviously do it. It's not being continued as a priority all the way through to 25 or to maturity. And this is catastrophic. It's catastrophic. That's slightly exaggeration, but not by much. It's significantly massive. Which is a surprise, because you'd think you'd have heard about it, in the environment. Everyone's heard about the greenhouse effect, and anything to do with health. You've heard about pesticides and don't eat sugar. Everyone knows what crimes not to commit. That's pretty clear. But this, how we've lost our connection with a priority with parents, with caregivers, including teachers, as a priority, and that we've let children attach primarily more with friends or people outside of them, and that we've all missed, the whole of society has missed it. It's shocking, because once you read it, hear it, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And it's so obvious in my life. So just by the way, my mum and dad did a pretty good job. It's not a polarity of good parents, bad parents. They did a 50% job, 70% okay. But I ended up not being connected to them for a long time, and it made me think about relationships in life in a certain way that I am only now feeling like I could possibly overcome, grow out of. See, what I think's really happened is I didn't grow up. I was still immature. I'm 46. And there's this feeling of immaturity, which I couldn't, it's why am I immature? Why am I not responding to life with maturity and responsibility? It was a puzzle to me, and I couldn't figure it out with spirituality. I couldn't figure it out. Different spiritual things I was doing, I was like, why do I act like a child? If I don't get this, I just, I complain really badly. So it's because I didn't grow up properly. Now, sure, I can blame my parents, but whatever. Now I've got the chance of doing it well. So what's happened is I've heard this philosophy. Okay, sorry, hold on to your kids. This book. It's not really a how-to book. It's really more a philosophical treaty, a philosophical constitution, a presentation, right? And it's saying, this is a problem, this problem, and then the last third of the book is how to do it, or the positive part of it. But it's really, the book is not really a how-to book. It's got a little bit in there, but because most of it's not really technique. You don't keep connected to our kids with technique. But if our philosophy is wrong or weak, we will not solve the problem. I've got a phraseology that I came up with years and years ago, which is probably from listening to House, that television program with the diagnosing doctor. It was very dramatic. There was, it's all about diagnosis in this hospital, And first half, they always diagnose it wrong, and it's always this rush to diagnose it correctly and save the day. Anyway, so phraseology I have is correct diagnosis is half fixed. So if you correctly diagnose a health problem, car problem, situation problem, psychological problem, if you correctly diagnose it, you've half fixed it. Because if you get the wrong diagnosis, it will not fix. It won't fix, or it'll be temporary or superficial. And so I could tell that my parenting in this last 3 years has been off, not working, and avoidant. I could see that, but I couldn't see why. I couldn't diagnose why. And different friends and family of going, Oliver's like this, and this, and it's like, no, that wasn't it. Everyone's saying, but you're in denial. was like, yeah, maybe. So my diagnosis is that I've been immature. I've been responsibly immature around relationships, which makes it a lot easier. It feels like a lot easier to fix because I've got the correct diagnosis now. Self-diagnosis, sure. Anyway, so I wanted to just, what was next? So I started to see Grace differently. I could start to see her attachment with me in the correct context, in the correct light. Not as a weakness, as, oh, I want to hang out with Dad. That's correct. I mean, I can't believe I was seeing this so wrong. That I was seeing it as a weakness, not as a necessity. It's a good thing. Anyway, so it's changed recently. So what happened is I spent a day with her a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, and we went to a park together, this really great park, and we spent about 3 hours there. And in this park, it's got a flying fox. It's actually got 2 flying foxes. There's one really fantastic flying fox. It's got a seat harness, and you strap the child in, and you can really like throw them hard if they're up to it, which Grace is. They won't get hurt. It's super fun. But the ride goes for like 10 seconds. And so that, you know, what every child wants, what Grace wanted was to go, you know, repeatedly. But of course there's other people there. Anyway, I had to pull her away because other people were coming. Sorry, I shouldn't say I had to pull her away. I explained to her I basically negotiated with her. No, I shouldn't say negotiate. It was time to hand it over to someone else after we'd blasted it for about 15 times. It was super fun. But she became attached to, addicted. That's not the right word either. Attachment and addiction. She really, really wanted to keep on just going. She really wanted to just keep on playing, you know, and she didn't want to get off. And so, anyway, I didn't pull her out of the seat. I basically stopped pushing her. I went to the bottom and I just went, no, it's time to get off. She's like, I don't want to. And I coaxed her out. I kind of danced her out of the seat. But then she wanted to stay, you know, next in line. I said, well, we could wait till we're next in line. Like I gave her that option. But then she became like a bit sort of too crazy, and I could tell it just was like, she's just going to be crazy whatever happens. So I decided to then once she got out of the seat, then I physically picked her up and went somewhere else. Now she started kicking me and screaming, like, I don't want to, but whatever. And so anyway, I went to this other little play thing around just next to it, and distracted her. You know, played with her, loved her. I love you. And she, within 2 minutes, she like snapped out of being unhappy and started to play. And it would look like that she had internally let go of not getting what she wanted, that she'd got over being upset. She'd moved on. And not just repressed distraction. She'd let it go. It would seem. So, for me, I could see that I did that whole thing with love, not from fear and pull her out and physically pull her out of the seat. I coaxed her out. Anyway. So basically I made this video to just say, please look into this subject, because it's larger than just parents trying to discipline their children. It's relationships, from marriage to intimate to friends to family, from babies to adult children, friendships. It covers all of that. But specifically, it covers the whole of child rearing till 25, about 25, when adults are mature. When, 25-year-olds or whatever are actually mature internally. It's monumentous. It's not just another how-to book. It's a recontextualization of that whole thing. So, how Hold On to Your Kids, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who co-wrote it with Dr. Gabor Mate. He also does some writing. It's available on Audible, physical, Kindle. Dr. Gordon Neufeld has got an institute in Canada where he trains around that whole thing, because he teaches and caregivers and foster people and children's psychologists that this way of thinking is relevant for all of those things. It's not just for parents. Parents are the main ones, but teachers have to, if they don't attach with the children, they're not as teachable. And this is part of the reason why there's a problem at schools, because it's not understood. And if the children come into school and not attached properly with their parents, and they're actually primarily attached with the peer group, then they're like, it's very hard. It's harder for the teachers to attach, to connect with the children, so they're not as teachable. It becomes a vicious circle. It's huge. So I'm hoping that you may look into it. Thank you. Bye-bye.